call this workshop back into order. We've been on recess for the last couple hours. The last couple items that we've handled have been closed session because they've dealt with proprietary information. The item that we're on right now is constitutional amendments. So as everyone knows, the Board of Directors is working with our legal staff to make some proposed changes to our Constitution. And after these proposed changes are made, we're going to vote on these things. Won't be today, but it's a long-term goal. So Aaron Schlehuber, if you want to pick up where we left off.
Sure. So what we want to do today is this. As we've been going through the document and making changes as discussed last time, generated some more questions, and we're at the point where I really don't want to take any further steps without getting direction from you, because those steps, I think it'd be fair to say, as your staff will be making decisions that are not ours to make. They're yours or the membership, depending on how you want to phrase it. So we need direction on some items. You sent you a list, email list yesterday. Lon indicated it's been printed off for you. If anybody wants to share it publicly, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing secret about the document. It's a number of items we need direction on, and a couple other items we just want to flag for you, and then have a discussion on them. So a few of them are big ticket items, or a few of them are kind of low-hanging fruit, and I will just get right into it. So specifically, what I'm looking for on a majority of these is at some point I'll ask the chair if it feels like we're in a place to do so, to whether it be through informal poll, raising the hands, just give us some direction so we can move forward with the document. If we can't get direction, that's okay. There's still work we can do. We can circle back. If tribal leadership wants more time to talk about these things amongst yourselves or with your constituents, there's no right or wrong way to go about it. The big one is right on top. Number one, we need some direction. Will there be an independent business board that oversees all economic activity that can apply to gaming and non-gaming? I'll talk about this just a little bit and explain why we're asking. The 2012 Constitution was, for all intents and purposes, silent on where the businesses lie, whether they sit with the executive branch or whether they sit with the legislative branch, but they allude to a business board. A business board is perhaps another way to say an EDC, some third body that's not the legislative body, not the executive, that oversees business activity, whether that be gaming or not gaming. It's a fairly common model in Indian country. It's a mixed bag out there. There are tribes that have it. There are tribes that don't have it. Whether having another body that oversees business activity is simply a policy choice that Sioux Tribe needs to make, and we have no opinion on it from our side of the table. We need direction from you. So what we would put to you is this, is if you want to place it in the executive, then tell us. If you want to place it under legislative, tell us. If you want us to craft an independent business board, which is we'll talk about that more later, maybe not even today, an independent body, tell us, and that's what we'll do. If we're going to put it in the executive, or we're going to put it in the legislative, or we are going to create an independent body, like Ho-Chunk, or let's see, Pokagon, Little Traverse, there's a few in the state, that raises a number of other questions we'd have to consider, no matter where we put it. So the big question is, where are we going to place the gaming activity? Where are we going to place the non-gaming activity? Then even below that big question, there's a couple small questions that are still just as important. Namely, how do we populate that body? And there's a lot of ways we could do that, no matter where we put it. So it could be, for ease of conversation, I think I started calling this body the Tribal Council. I think that's the term we settled on. Is that right? Yeah. So it can be as it is today. If we leave a legislative body, it can be the Tribal Council itself. That's what we have right now. You are the gaming authority, and as things currently stand, EDC answers up to you. So that's one model. You would be that body. Option one. Another way to consider this is you would create another body below you. an independent group, and that's appointed by this body one way or another. If we put it in the executive, we still have to have that conversation about how to populate that body, and there's lots of ways to do it. Tribal council appoints 3, the chair appoints 1, and the 2 key executives appoint 1, for example. So under legislative, there's a couple options. Under executive, there's a couple options. If you're going to make it, it's an independent body, not necessarily answering to either legislative or executive. Those options still exist on how you populate it. Tribal council appoints a few, chair appoints 1 or 2, the executives appoint none, appoint 1 or 2. Those are all kind of questions that come secondary. So the questions kind of descend. The big question is where is it going to sit? And once we decide where it's going to sit, we decide who is on it. That's the second question. And that's the same question no matter where we put it, whether it's the legislative, executive, or on the side over here. No matter what we do, that's the second part we have to talk about. So what we're looking for today at number 1, to help us move this document forward, where do you want gaming/non-gaming? For ease of conversation for today, I'll just consider them 1. And we can talk about whether they're going to be 1 or separate at a different time or later today. So
Okay.
that's the introduction. Well, you need to listen now.
Okay, so we're going to have a board discussion, and if we're ready to make a decision at the end of this discussion, we're going to poll, so that way we can give direction to our legal staff. So Tyler?
Feel free to take notes.
So the business body is, I mean, it's the same that we've already been working on with Dan and the EDC, correct? You're just asking where to put it?
Yeah, in essence, although in that one, to be very blunt, when Dan and I have spoken to you about that model code, we have not discussed who would sit on that body, just that EDC would exist of its own. So there's that nuance difference. We were going to bring that up down the road when the time was right, to be blunt.
Okay, so will that impact us implementing that before any vote happens on this, or should we now wait, is what you're suggesting?
I've had 1 or 2 quick conversations with Doyle about it. I don't know the answer. The EDC code that we've spoken to you about, we could implement that fairly quickly and get EDC in its own silo, which will give Doyle the opportunity to craft his business models the way he wants to, and we've talked about that. If we wait for this process, obviously that's going to be a lot longer. I would suggest we probably keep the EDC model on the current track. Even if we go through the effort of creating it, and all that internal work is done, namely the accounting department will be doing a lot of work to set that up. It's not wasted work, because whatever we decide to do here today, when that gets implemented, I think that kind of work will have to be done anyway.
Okay, and then my other question is, will we have to address where the Quaden Gaming Authority is then too?
Yep, when I say gaming, I'm referring to the Kuwait Casino Gaming Authority. So there's that specific question, Tyler, there's a couple ways to do it. There's tribes that just don't pay so much attention to the terminology I use and what I say next, because there's just a lot of ways to say it. So let's just call it an EDC. There's a model where a tribe creates an EDC or a business board. Then down within that, they have gaming, the gaming authority proper, and then they have their non-gaming entities kind of coexisting together. And there's different way to structure that flow chart that honors IGRA, NIGC requirements and all these other things, but still carves it out to the side. So there's multiple ways to do it, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be a gaming authority as defined by IGRA, because that's required.
No, my question is, are we going to have to decide where to put that one as well, like under legislative or executive?
Yes, when I say gaming, I'm specifically referring to the gaming authority proper.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's it, thank you.
Okay, anyone else on this topic? Sorry, Kim. Kim, then Rob.
Didn't we have a business committee in the past? Is that, like, when did that dissolve?
We had
It was
we had
businessmen
an
in the
EDC
area, right?
that was blown up in 98, 99, 97. It was right before I came here,
96.
96.
Okay, and how, like, I wasn't on the board then, so how did that work for us?
Predates me, but my understanding, it was not an independent body. It was a sub entity of the board.
Okay, and then, I don't know if this is a Freudian slip, but it says, will gaming authority continue to be compromised by the board?
I think that's
Surprised.
I think that's a Freudian slip.
I got a smile out of that, so,
Composed.
yeah, I think that was just my question about the
Yeah.
past business committee. So what was their function? I'm sure it was to bring ideas to the,
They ran the businesses. There was there was a electric sign business. I can't remember the name of it.
Neon.
yeah,
But they made the
Neon-
signs.
Neon of
and a
the
couple
North
other
or
endeavors.
something? Yeah.
That's fine. She knows the answer. And there was an individual that was charged with operating those businesses that answered to the board, and it ended kind of roughly, I think is a fair way to put it.
okay, all right,
It didn't end well.
okay.
Okay, Rob.
So I guess how would Sioux Tribe Inc. fit into this?
Nothing we do here impacts STI in any way that I can think of. The way their charter is structured, that ownership interest is to the tribe in general, and how we structure ourselves in-house has no impact on them.
Would we have to determine who they report to at that point, or would that remain with the council?
It's probably a conversation we could have. For example, if you set up a business board that meets in a different room and is different people, and you want SDI to have that reporting relationship to them, we could structure it such a way. It's a conversation that could be had.
I mean, the Sioux Tribe Inc. conversation's a whole nother conversation, because I think that we need to implement a way that they can be accountable to members. To me, that's just, it's a way to pull a curtain across the members' eyes, and most
If you're thinking that it's best STI stays reporting to the board of directors, that's perfectly fine too.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Okay, and then as far as where the gaming and business operations sit, I would like to, and I might be alone on this one, but I would like to see constitutionally the board stripped down to legislation, where we're doing nothing but governance. So I guess under that, I like the idea of each branch appointing members to serve on that committee. I think business-minded people would certainly be better at operating our business than the board. None of us operated multi-million-dollar businesses before, so the fact that we win a popularity contest doesn't qualify us to do so. I think we need to get people who have done it and that. But where the reporting falls, I think it has to.
I object. Speak for yourself on that one, Rob.
What business do you own?
You said run businesses. I've run 2 businesses in the past with multi-million-dollar budgets, so speak for yourself.
Multi-million-dollar corporations. You do a lot of
Nonprofits,
things.
yes.
You do a lot of things.
Hey, Tyler,
to see
he's
all
got the
your
floor. Go
awards.
ahead, Rob.
I don't know if I buy it anyways. He can say whatever he wants. And
Let's be done.
so, yeah, I think the reporting for those need to either be with the executive under daily operations, or the idea of each branch appointing, but reporting to the board, it has not worked. It's never going to work. This board's elected to govern. They need to stick to governing.
Okay, Mike.
Under this business, independent business board, the other tribes that you've been researching, were they paid boards? Is that I mean, are we looking
Both
at it?
ways.
Both, there's ones that aren't and ones that are?
Yeah, it really is all over the map. There's no model that just floats up and says this is the vast majority. That seems to be pretty mixed.
Okay. Because in looking at that, I mean, I think it comes with its own problems, one way or the other, whether we're
Yes.
doing it or whether this independent board doing it.
Yes.
I think they're just separate problems, right? We're going to be turning one set of problems for a different set of problems.
We are a
But
tribe.
if we are adding another layer of these people getting paid too, and us looking at limited resources in the upcoming years, I think we have to take that into consideration. So just something to think about, I guess.
I can tell you, that's not something I drilled down into, is whether they are paid. I was just reading up on the structures.
I know a few
But
other tribes that do it, so I guess I
I'm
could
generally
reach out.
aware, and this isn't carved in the stone, tribes that are generating a lot of revenue, those are paid. And the tribes that are generating much less revenue, I think it's fair to say if they're paid, it's quite a bit less. And there's some examples along those lines not far away from us geographically.
Okay, anyone else? So you guys need direction about where the businesses will be supervised, so what are the topics? Because I'm going to pull the board, Aaron.
How many board members do we have today? I can't see the screen.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with Austin.
Okay. So what I'm thinking, Austin, just give me a second to think through it. This one's a big enough ticket. I want to make sure that the direction we're getting from the board is well represented, and there's whatever way it comes, that the board, that we're here in front of the board, and we hear that direction, because the next one you see will have a lot of this on paper, presumably, and I don't want to have our staff put all that work in and then back up. That's why I was asking. So if you're going to start thinking about how to pull things out, I think maybe
I mean, I share your concern because this isn't any disrespect. We have a lot of people not here.
That's what I'm
They
getting at.
know that they need to be here.
But that's
We're
why I
going to vote
said,
on this, and then they're going to backtrack us.
that's why when I started, I said, if it's not decided today, that's okay, because I know this is a big question, and I know this is the first time you thought about it, and I am perfectly fine if you want to bench this one and come back another day and talk about it, because it is a very big ticket item.
Okay, do you guys want to talk about that? Okay, Rob, the mic.
okay, okay.
Yeah, and I'm fine benching it. You know, if we need everyone here, I mean,
That's fine.
give 'em extra notice, I guess.
So I guess I got to point out that this is a workshop and not an input session, but we're elected officials to represent the will of the members, so I don't really feel comfortable even casting votes until I have time to put the proposed revisions or these suggestions out to the membership and have time to network and gauge the membership on what the membership wants, because I mean, I could sit up here all day and say what I believe, but my job isn't to necessarily come up here and direct or vote based on how I believe. I have to hear from the membership. So we either need to do input sessions with this information out to the membership and give them time to review, so they have time to tell us the way they think about it. It's their government, so I don't want to do any polls or votes today. I think we just get all of the suggestions out there. We can discuss them and say how we feel on them, but I think that this information needs to be out to the membership, and we need to hear what they have to say before we start making polls or votes.
Okay, to that end, Rob, what I could, if that's, so I hear you, if that ends up being the general feeling of the board, what we could do is take this number 1, and I would want to turn that into, nothing too long, a page, just a couple of paragraphs introducing what the concept is, some of the obvious problems. Mike pointed out a good one. Earlier today, Mike and I had a couple-minute conversation about this, about the reality of a tribe. We're a tribe. Some things just are going to be what they are in the tribe. It is what it is. And that's what Mike was saying. Are we trading one? I wouldn't say my board of directors is a problem. they're not compromising anything, but are you trading one political reality for just another political reality? Another Board of Tribe members with their own politics and concerns? Are we just swapping? That's a very, very fair thing to ask. So if we were to do something that's a page and just fairly concise and brief, we'd lay out perhaps, here's what we're talking about, here are some common options, some common structures when it comes to the businesses. Here are some of the realities of the positives and some of the realities of the negatives, and that's something you could share with your constituents and have those conversations.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like you said, we're a tribe. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be politics no matter what. But I think the general consensus of the membership is that, from what I've gathered, is the point in this is to separate the powers of government so there's a check and balance system to where all of the authority is not resting in this room. And I think that is the main point, and to give members standing in court and the court the ability to check our power with constitutional review of legislation. But as far as politics go, I don't think we're going to get away from that. We're talking about having elected officials and stuff, and that's going to open up more politics, but it's good. It's a good thing. But I think it was Justice Brand said the remedy for negative speech is just more speech. So I think the more elected positions we have and open up in different branches will provide that check and balance, because then the members are controlling the checks and balances. So I think it's a good idea to summarize this and then give the members the time to digest it, because ultimately it's going to be up to them anyways. So, I mean, if we don't spend the time to get their input now, they're not going to want to vote on the finished product. And for me, as a member, prior to being on the board, put myself in just the everyday member shoes, I would be really hesitant to vote on anything that was constructed by the board without membership input. So I think we need to start with the membership.
Okay, Mike, then Sean.
Rob touched base on a lot of that. I was just going to caution polling too early, because I'm here. I think I'm going to need some time to digest this too, and to explain and talk with membership as well on what direction I think is best. Now, you're bringing these forward now because I'm assuming that these other boards have it baked into their constitution. So that, and we need to kind of address this now. This business aspect, this gaming aspect is probably baked into the constitution.
Some have it in the Constitution, and some honestly leave it right to legislation. It's a choice. But since we're talking about the constitutional issues, now's the time to talk about it.
Okay. So if we had that choice, we could either bake it in now, and let the people vote on baking it in, or even if we don't go that route, we could potentially put that in later.
You have that option.
Okay, just wanted to kind of make sure I have all my, okay, thank you.
Sean.
I agree with Rob and Mike, especially Rob. I think the members do have to have a lot of input on this. But I'm concerned about number 5. This continually comes up about the MAC ban. As crafted litigation may be brought challenging their inclusion in the tribe. Is under the new constitution, is this, if voted on, is that going to go away and never be brought up again?
Is it okay if I just go through them one by one and get them nailed down? Well, I mean, we'll get to it.
Yeah, you can, but yeah, because I'm,
All right.
yeah.
We'll get back to it, Sean.
Okay.
Aaron.
So I don't know if we're doing opening statements, but if we could do just kind of some preparatory statements, because not everybody is on every call, so you don't know, what they've heard so far or what they know that we're doing. So this is a process that's been in the process for since 2000, and well, let's go back to actually since 1975 when the Constitution was enacted. I'm old enough that I remember my grandma coming home from debates in the basement of St. Isaac Jogues, in some of the debates back then. I was only 10, so I didn't completely understand everything. But in earnest, the people asked for, and the board accommodated in 2005, creating a constitutional convention committee. There was 30 people or more from all over. Different people were on that committee, different persuasions, different views, and they came up with a draft. And then they finished their job. They reported it to the board of directors. At the time, Mr. Cosley, John Cosley Jr. was the chair. He presented it to the board. Their job was done, and we did nothing. The board did nothing since 2007 until I left office. I came back to office. 2012, we reignited a process. We invited all the former Constitutional Convention Committee members, the Elder Advisory, and the Tribal Board of Directors were permitted to attend this time. They finished their review. They spent they didn't take as long as I think 2 years as the first committee, but they spent probably 8 or 9 months. And they finished their review and they put it forward back to the Board of Directors. Just last year, the Elder Advisory Committee voted unanimously to support moving forward with the draft. So a separation of powers is easy to understand. It's what we all learn. I'm a high school dropout, so I didn't have 11th, 12th grade, but I learned it in 8th grade when I did go to school, and it's easy to understand. If you have a better understanding of our history as American Indians, you know that the basis for the separation of powers in our modern form of democracy came from the Iroquois Confederacy Great Law of Peace. This is our contribution to the world, American Indians to the world of real democracy where women have rights, where before people in other parts of the world didn't. So this is not indigenous, or it is indigenous, it's not foreign. It's been argued to be not the white man's way, but it is adopted by a white government, but they patterned it after the Iroquois Confederacy Great Law of Peace. Rob said it, right now we have an oligarch, we have a one-branch government. The court only exists at the pleasure of the board, so the court doesn't even need to exist. It's at the pleasure of the board. There's no separation between the executive and the legislature. The legislature, whatever the reason, the intent, feel like they're representing the interest of the people, but they get into the micromanagement, into the management of programs and services, and that's never a good outcome. It's never been a good outcome. So we should be thinking about transcending who's in office. Someday we're all going to be dead. And what legacy would we like to have? Would we like to have a legacy where we became a real government and established a separation of powers? We were forced to adopt the current Constitution. I've read Mr. Hatch's letters back and forth, both young Mr. Hatch, the attorney, also Mr. Hatch, the chairperson, and also Joe Lumsden's letters back and forth. I got them from Mr. Hatch, the chairman's granddaughter, and I've read them back and forth. We did not want to adopt the Constitution that we adopted. We had to adopt it, or we weren't going to be able to get programs and services. So we always knew that we would adopt a real Constitution and become a real government. I know there's some people that listen out there, there might even be some people on this board who don't see us as a real government, but there are some of us who do. We are citizens of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians. We're governed by our laws, and because of that, we expect that we will have all the rights inured with citizenship, including the U.S. constitutional rights. And I brought this up, but we haven't remedied it. My oath of office this time did not include a swearing to uphold the United States Constitution. Our Constitution currently does stipulate that we abide by the U.S. Constitution. But all those rights and protections that are in the U.S. Constitution need to also be in our Constitution. That means standing in tribal court, a Bill of Rights, the ability to sue your government when they're doing something wrong, the ability to redress your government when they're doing something wrong. I look back, and I'm almost done, I look back to all of the biggest mistakes that we've ever made as a tribe. If we had a separation of powers and the citizens of this tribe had the ability to say no to certain ventures in our history, we would have saved billions, literally $1 billion we would have saved. So I think, we have 7 people who've said they support a 3-branch separation of powers. We have about 3 or 4 who haven't committed between a 2 or 3-branch separation of powers, but that sounds positive. It sounds like it's in the right direction. We only had 1 that either voted no or abstained. They wouldn't indicate either way. So what we should be doing now And I do believe it's good that we have a careful and deliberative process. But what we should be doing now is outlining everything that we're reviewing, put that out for the membership to know what we're looking at, have a timeline for what we're looking at, because if we don't do that, it feels like we're filibustering or creating reasons not to adopt the Constitution. So let's set a regular time, let's put it all out, everything that needs to be talked about. Let's have that conversation. If it takes a couple of months to do it, it shouldn't take a year or 6 months even, because remember that committee in 2005 spent 2 years doing all of the work for us. They've done all of the work. We had meetings in every unit. In at least, I think, 22 communities, this was brought to them and asked for their opinion. So this notion that, people don't know what we're talking about, they do know what we're talking about. They're just waiting for us to take the action. So let's do that. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak on this topic? Is anyone opposed to delaying polling on this item until you guys have more time to process it for legal's recommendation based on what they're hearing here today? Okay, so we'll skip this one for today, Aaron.
Yep, that's fine. So just to put a finer point on it, so what I'm going to do on the issue of where we're going to park all of our businesses, I'm going to generate, I'm going to try to keep it short and brief and non-lawyerly sounding, a simple document that explains the options of where these businesses report up to, whether it be this board, the executive, or an independent one, and just kind of lay out what those look like and the options of how we would potentially populate it, whether it be you yourselves or you appoint something clean and simple that you can share with your constituents and get input. And when we circle back, you'll be in a better position to have an intelligent discussion on it.
Okay, very good. Aaron?
Okay, and I apologize. I did come late because I have a child and the bus was late and all of that. So, so I'm looking at, and I know we're going to hold on the Gaming Authority, Gaming Commission. Is that what we're doing?
No, we're on number one. And in general, what you missed, you only missed about maybe 7-10 minutes, not much. In the draft we have, we're trying to build the powers, the executive powers and the legislative powers. They were a little amorphous. So we took the legislative powers that the board has now, put them in. We took the executive powers from 12 and put them in. So they're, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and laid them out. And it became very apparent, nowhere did it say where the casino or the non-gaming businesses report up to. In 12, it references a business board, but says nothing else about it. So the question here is, if we really want to define well the legislative powers and executive powers, we need to know where are we putting the casino and where are we putting EDC.
So I don't know if there was any conversation on that. So I'm going to say this for anybody that's listening. Go and research the Joseph Kalt Harvard Project for Economic Development. The ideal structure is for a tribe to create a business authority, separate themselves from that business authority, but create very clear standards by which that authority has to operate. We've gone back and forth, and we haven't done it right. On the notion that we wanted to create a separation, we created Sioux Tribe, Inc., and we ended up in a lot of quarrel over that, a lot of argument, disagreement. The part that I was very uncomfortable with was they did not want to be accountable and did not want to sign an agreement that they would have to provide the books to us to look at our own finances. That was a big red flag. And then I left office. The board dismantled a lot of that, which I think the board made the right decision by doing that. But if we do want to create and separate and insulate the economics of the tribe from the politics of the tribe, a business authority makes sense. We have control of the purse strings. We have control of policy. We can create whatever parameters they have to operate within. And so that is the ideal. Whether or not we'll come up with that is another question. I'm not sure, so. And then if we're gonna talk about Gaming Commission, I've got a lot to say about that too.
All right, so we're all set on number one. I understand the marching orders. It won't take long to get that to you.
Yeah, let's move to 2.
Number 2, Gaming Commission, really similar theory. Where this pops into our head is, as we're fine tuning this draft constitution, we're thinking to all the code and ordinances that will need to be changed and amended. So the Gaming Commission, the simple question, it may be, I'm assuming everything on here will be like one. You're going to want to have to go back and talk to your constituents, talk amongst yourselves. Perfectly fine. Gaming Commission, quite simply, is the intent to leave it with the legislative body, or are we interested in creating a separate body that we populate through some appointment process? And I will note the NIGC has a guidance memo out that strongly suggests in bold capital that you have the body be separate from your elected tribal leadership because it is a regulatory body. Having it be one and the same is frowned upon, but it is not a black and white IGRA requirement. It is a very, very strong suggestion. Looking for input.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so this one to me is really easy. 6 months into me being on the council in 1996, we created the Gaming Commission. We each were asked to read the Nevada gaming law. It was a textbook. And then they quizzed us on the Nevada gaming law. And so here's the thing. At one time, the United States government wanted to regulate gaming. And we are self-governed. So we're independent governments, and we push back. Tribes push back. And what happened was the NIGC was created to facilitate tribes establishing their own authorities and their own regulatory structures. And so when we first created our Gaming Commission, the rest of the country, the rest of tribes, were establishing separate gaming commissions from their gaming authority. And here's why that's important. The Gaming Commission is supposed to be the regulatory structure that is the eye in the sky over the gaming operations. The gaming authority is an oversight of your management, whether that's a separate management board or your tribal board, over your gaming operations. And if you have your gaming authority and gaming commission one and the same, then you are the regulators and you're the operators. That is incestuous. You cannot possibly be the oversight and also be the operator. And so that's why the NIGC for 20 years has had a bulletin that has recommended tribes to separate their tribal gaming authorities from their tribal gaming commissions. So if there is a separation ultimately between the legislative and the executive branches, then it seems like the regulatory structure would go as a subordinate body of the legislative branch, and the gaming authority could be related to, in some way, the executive branch of the tribe. So that's the ideal structure. I mean, we can create it however we want, but tribes across the country have separated their tribal council from their regulatory structure, their gaming commissions.
Okay, anyone else? Does anyone oppose to giving direction on this at this point? Okay, so what are we doing, guys? Are we polling right now? I'm not seeing any more hands. Anyone opposed to a poll? See where we stand on it? All right, so Lana, let's do a poll. Let's call on all the board members. Right now, there's two.
I misunderstood that then. I would like some time.
Okay,
So-
and that's perfectly fine. You guys just got to tell me that, though, so.
So like number one, for number two, I will, what I had said, and Aaron said something similar, I'll give you a paragraph or two so you can take it with you and talk to your constituents. Aaron actually said it better than I did. It's, you know, the fox watching the hen house kind of thing.
Okay, Aaron, then Kimley.
Yeah, so I would say that comes from 22 years of experience as a member, as a gaming commissioner, and I think 16 of those years as the chair of the Gaming Commission, and took very seriously that role. So I think the poll questions, whenever we're ready for it, would be, do we separate the gaming, do we have an independent gaming commission from the gaming authority? So that's one question. Then, does the Gaming Commission belong under the executive branch or the legislative branch? Does the Gaming Authority belong under the executive branch or the legislative branch? And I think they're all self-evident questions. They're tautological, really, but those would be the poll questions.
Kim?
I guess just to add a little color to Rob's statement, I personally am not willing to poll on anything. I'd like, once this conversation to be done, to get some feedback. So just so you're aware, I don't want to pull on anything today. I want these questions to be brought up, in my opinion, and then it go out for membership input. So, that's all.
Are you guys prepared to take action on any of these 1 through 9 today? Raise your hand if you guys are going to take action on it.
We've had it in front of us.
Okay, so Aaron, with that in mind, it seems like every one of these is going to be punted. Do you want to go through these and talk about each one of them? Or do you
Yeah.
want to provide that one-page sheet on each one of them
No,
with the
I-
pros and cons and how this is going to work?
I'd like to talk through, so at least we can have a quick conversation. And then when the board gets that explanatory memo, they have a kind of a sense of what it is.
And then we'll go through them all over again. So, yep, so
No
if you want to go
problem.
through 3, let's
Yep,
do
no
it.
problem. 3 is not a big one. We have all these committees, variety of committees. I am operating on the assumption they would stay with legislative. That kind of makes the most sense. But rather, when I started out, I said we didn't want to make assumptions as staff and put something in that's not our decision. So this is an easy one. I assume Conservation Committee, the very other committees all exist under the legislative body. I don't think that one will be tricky.
Yeah, Aaron?
Right, there are exceptions. I think for the most part, that's correct.
There are exceptions.
The exceptions, I think that they do and should belong under the legislative branch, because that's the representative government, and having people advise them of different, issues and culture or different areas. But the exceptions that I can think of right now is the Housing Commission should be an administrative, because the federal government allows tribes to create TDHEs that are housing commissions that are advisory to the administration of a tribe. If you read the law, that's the way it's structured. And the Housing Commission, you get this mixed up, advises the Housing Authority, and that's an administrative function. So that should be administrative. The CORA is, it's embedded in CORA that the executive is the authority, is the seated member of CORA. And so while the Conservation Committee, I think, is an instrumentality of the legislative branch, it's advisory to the authority, but the administration is the seated position at CORA. And I know this because at different times, members of the Board of Directors didn't like what I was doing at CORA, tried to remove me and appoint somebody else who ended up going to prison, and didn't happen because the code stipulates that the chairperson is the lead on CORA. That's an executive, so.
Yeah, CORA
let me-
is a good example of being an outlier.
I'm trying to think if, one other one, the Health Board. The Health Board is advisory to the administration, and it's to make sure that the policies and procedures of the, like contract health or purchase of referred services is being implemented properly. So that is like an administrative appeal board, and it's not, I know that they've at times had different purposes and they've expanded differently, but the way that's structured under IHS is it's advisory to the administration, not to the legislative branch. Those are the only 3 that I can think of right now.
Okay, any other comments on 3? All right, hearing none, let's move on to 4. Aaron?
Ryan was going to be here to have a detailed conversation about what to do with election commissions and elections in general, but he's occupied with line 5 stuff. So I'm just going to give a real general commentary on number 4, and then I'm going to park number 4 completely, and I'll let Ryan come in and handle that when he's available, because that one's obviously so unique, and I don't want to step on his toes. But we've been having some conversations of all of our committees, the election commissions, obviously the big ticket. We've had some conversations of currently the authority and the process to conduct elections isn't enshrined in the Constitution, but the vast majority of how it's actually conducted and how the power is laid out is existing in Chapter 10. And everyone's very familiar with how that works. But since we're going to be retooling things, we wanted to have a conversation of, do we take for example, the election commission and as we're doing with the prosecutor's office, establish them in the Constitution, make them a constitutional body, give them some of their parameters or sideboards of operation, but understand that there will always be legislation on how they actually go about conducting their business. There's a give and take between a legislative body and an election body, which you see in any state or the U.S. That's a pretty normal model. So Ryan has working just a short body of work on some ideas on how to make this kind of work. The unique thing there, or the problem there, is the Election Commission is currently working on a number of amendments to fix and tweak some things they saw last time they didn't particularly care for. So there's, in some sense, maybe two things happening at once. The Election Commission at some point is going to, if I'm wrong, Lana will tell me, is going to come in with some recommended changes. And then also Ryan's going to come in and talk to you about how we could take the commission, make it empowered in the Constitution, put a brick wall around it, with the understanding that there will always be legislation needed to enact the details of how they conduct their job. So I'm not going to give you any further information on that because I'll leave that to Ryan and then how he handles that with the commission.
Okay, Aaron.
So I think they're going down the right path. I think that makes sense. I have never been comfortable with the current structure or the previous structure. The election operations have been positioned in the executive branch. They've been squarely under legal, or they've been under the chair's office. And I've never been comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with them being under the legislative branch either, because that's just, it's too convenient and it's too, again, I'll use the word incestuous, because when our employees that will report directly to us have the control of the ballots, there's a problem there. So that's not to impugn anybody's integrity. It just doesn't even pass the basic smell test. So I think having a separate, independent structure per the Constitution, there's a number of areas that I think are going to have that. Some regulatory structures of the tribe, I think, probably should be semi-independent or, out of reach of the executive or the legislative branch of the government. So I think that is on the right track so that we have an independent election. We can say through practice and through our personal integrity that we have fair elections, but the temptation is too great because it's not physically separate from either the executive or the legislative branch.
Okay, anyone else on this topic? And again, Aaron's not going to really be able to share a whole lot because this is going to be assigned to Ryan. Okay, let's skip to
Number
which one are we on
5.
then? Number 5? Okay.
Number 5 is always going to be touchy. I acknowledge it. I understand it. I do want to mention that when this current process started, Rob had mentioned that one of the reasons he wanted to focus on separation of powers rather than the entirety of the 2012 document was to take off the table some of the obvious controversial things that just make everything harder, MAC ban potentially being one of them. So this one isn't so much anything we need to do on. It's just we want to point out to you that as we move to separate powers and authorize a member to bring litigation in tribal court, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we may be dealing with MAC ban through litigation anyway. A member can file a complaint, claim MAC ban doesn't belong in the tribe, and we're all in court. So I don't really want to, there's no conversation to be had. I just wanted to flag that. We can talk about it again. The board may want to think about ways to address it. That's about as gently as I can put it. Otherwise, you potentially are walking yourself into asking the court to decide whether or not MAC ban properly was brought into this tribe. And yeah, I know you had wanted to say something.
Good, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Aaron, then Sean, if you wanted the opportunity to speak on it? No. Okay, all right. Aaron, go ahead.
So I want to say this because there's all kinds of added value out there and people trying to impugn what we're doing or what we're not doing. There's a number of areas that the committee, the Constitution Convention Committee, reviewed and voted on and recommended move forward This is one of those, but so is at-large, so is Unit 6, so is redistricting. There's a number of areas, and I think that we have a majority of our board today that's willing to move forward on the separation of powers because it's so important. And to put off for the future, because, this is not like we have a one and done, one time we work on the Constitution and we're done forever. In the future, we can work on those other items. I also want to say this, because there's a lot of animus out there. There is nobody on this board that I've heard that's talking about removing anybody from the rolls. And that includes people that descend from the Mackinac Band. And I know there are different camps out there that like to instigate arguments back and forth to each other. That's just what we do as Indian people, I guess. But and I'm not friends with everybody on this board. I know there's some people on this board who hate me. But I will say that I have not heard from anybody on this board who's talking about disenfranchising the Mackinac Band or disenrolling them or creating a pathway to litigate to get them out of our tribe. I haven't heard that from anybody on this board, so.
Bridget?
So I have a procedural question, I guess. Tonight, is it going to be these issues that general counsel has to the board at any time? Are members going to be able to speak as we go through them, or is it going to be until the very end, or is it just a listening session for them?
So like last time, if members want to come up and speak beforehand, they have the opportunity, and then at the end, but at the end of the day, it's a workshop with the board of directors. So if they want to speak at the end or before, I'll give them that.
I just didn't think that's what we had decided. I thought it was going to be open input. It would be better as we're going through these that they could raise their hand if they wanted to. I mean, we've got 3 hours.
Yeah, it's just the way I decided to handle it. It'd allow us to progress through the conversation a little bit easier. It's hard enough to control a room of board members, let alone whoever walks through the door, but everyone will have the chance to talk, yeah. I won't
It's
cap.
just people are coming and going on and off, so it's kind of hard for them to talk before they know what the discussion is, and then they might not be on at the end for the question. So I just wanted to know if it had been discussed, so.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Kimley?
So Aaron S., quick question with that. I know that Aaron Payment just had stated that he didn't believe that that was anyone's intent, which I'm not saying I've heard one way or another. With what you just stated, that it's then potentially the judicial branch's interpretation. I mean, right, for MAC band, it doesn't.
There's a path.
But the risk is there. The risk is there.
The risk is there, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that as well as everyone else, that it doesn't necessarily matter what the board believes, right? Once we create the judicial branch, that then that is left into the hands of them. Okay,
Yes,
I just
yes.
wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're correct. You are right.
Okay, Rob?
So this isn't just a issue with the MAC ban. This is the entire purpose of the separation of powers, is to create a check and balance to the board. And so the discussion we're having now is how to circumvent the process that we're trying to establish through a separation of powers by saying this could happen. Well, that's the point. The point is for the court to review laws and determine if they're constitutional. So the fear that they're going to review a law and determine it's unconstitutional, one, signifies that there's good potential that it's unconstitutional. Two, it's literally saying, how do we either avoid this process or take care of it before the fact? That's not this board's place. It's either the member's place or the court's place, because that's all laws since the establishment of this tribe, since the Constitution was ratified. All of them will be subject to constitutional review by a judicial branch, and that is the purpose of this separation. So whether it's MAC band or any other law, yes, it's going to be litigated. That's the point.
Well, I brought it up, Rob, because at the
No, I'm not.
beginning of this process, the idea was to remove that issue from the table.
Right.
To make the voting process cleaner, and I want you to know it's still an issue. By
It's going
just
to be.
separation, it's still an issue.
It's going to be until it's dealt with properly. It's never been dealt with properly, and the only two ways to deal with it properly is through a constitutional amendment that the members vote on, or by a court determining whether it's a legal law or not under the Constitution, and those are really the only two options. And so, I mean, the purpose of this will play out the same as it does there with any other law that this board has made in the last 50 years. So the problem's not going to go away. And it might not be a problem. I mean, the members could vote, include them in the Constitution, but that's the whole purpose, is that is a decision for the members. And if this board refuses to let the members make that decision, then it's up to a court to determine if it's constitutional for this board to either make the decision or to refuse the membership a vote on it. I mean, I don't have a law degree, but I would think that any manipulation of a constitution has to be done by the members, and that's just never happened. So I just don't think that we're going to settle it here when it can only come by way of the members or an independent court.
All right, Kim Lee, then Aaron.
Yeah, no, just to clarify, Rob, my statement there, it wasn't necessarily just that. I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get convoluted in the conversation, Aaron's point. So whether I agree, disagree, I do think that that there's probably many things that should be addressed and looked at, but I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get lost in the statement that Aaron made. So that's all.
Aaron.
I was trying to give comfort to the membership by saying I haven't heard it. I'm not sure if Director Kim has heard contrary to that, but I can tell you that I'm speaking for myself. I have not heard even one member of this board of directors talk about trying to use this new right to remove anybody from this tribe. So I can't speak to, she might have heard differently. All right, so what I want to say, though, and I'll say this generally, I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but denying members the right to exercise their constitutional right, however they choose to do it, is paternalistic. And it's exactly why we need to separate the powers so that the people can make that decision. If we don't separate the powers because we're afraid that the members are going to exercise their right to disagree with us, that's exactly the reason why we need a separation of powers, because that's tyranny, that's a paternalistic structure. We shouldn't be afraid of the people. We should invite the people to lead the government. Then we will become a real government and a strong government. We shouldn't be afraid of how the people are going to exercise their right.
Okay, any more discussion on this topic before we move on, guys, to 6? Okay, so let's move on to 6, Aaron.
Number 6 is really a placeholder. It's an opportunity for us to tell you how staff is going about working on the Constitution and then trying to issue spots, how various ordinances or codes or even internal practices will need to be modified to account for the fact that there can now potentially be a litigation. So Josh has been tasked with, I guess you call it, issue spotting or tracking the issues as we sit around and talk about this and ideas pop up. So I just wanted to give you a general idea of things that at some point we're going to have to come back and either have discussions on, whether it be through code amendments, whatever the case may be. There will be a long list at some point in time. This is down the road, more a part of implementation than the actual crafting of the Constitution itself as it stands now. So just some examples. And Josh has really been responsible for thinking a lot of these. So disenrollment, there's an assumption that if there's a disenrollment, that member will have access to tribal court to challenge that disenrollment. My thought there was we have a sister tribe in Michigan that has a long history with handling disenrollments. And I thought I'd reach out to them and just take a look at how they have built their systems to handle it, since they seem to deal with it on a pretty regular basis. I don't think it's ever going to be a problem in Sioux Tribe, but, we might have one every 2-3 years. I'd rather us have some kind of process in place that tells the members and the enrollment department how things are going to move forward in court, rather than just simply looking at the court staff, enrollment department, and saying, we're not really sure, figure it out. That's just an example of some work we'll want to do to get ready for things down the road that may be rare, but when they happen, it's incumbent that we try to have some kind of a solid process in place. We flagged open meetings and proprietary. As we move into this realm, Chapter 14 is going to be subject to more scrutiny. Our use of closed session, our use of open meetings ordinance. We've had some conversations about this. Now, we keep coming back around to a proprietary. We're going to want to do some work to firm up, making sure all of our laws are properly crafted to protect proprietary information, so that if we are challenged that something was discussed in closed session, whatever the case may be, then it's business related, the document we relying on is well crafted and very clearly tells us this is a business issue, this is proprietary. Try to make it as black and white as possible, so we're not in the position of having to rely on the court to craft that definition for us. Again, this is not a hard one to do. It's just something we're flagging as is going to want a little extra attention through the implementation process. Did you want me to stop?
Go ahead, Aaron. Yeah.
Comments. So one comment with respect to when we go into closed session versus open session is, I don't believe, and I'm going to say this very magnanimously, I don't believe there's any malicious intent involved that I have seen over the years. But I will also say, when you are the judge, jury, and executioner, that is a slippery slope, because you get to decide it, and if it's convenient to just do it in closed session, then you do it, right? So what we need is, we need a better definition, like promulgate, when we do go into closed session, because using the broad category of it's proprietary is, number one, anything can be proprietary, but is it necessarily need to be confidential? That's number one. Number two, at what point is it need to be confidential, and what points doesn't it need to be confidential? And we should be able to, the members should be able to challenge that. So like, if we're going to get ready to go into closed session, they should be able to say, okay, I know you said it's proprietary, but can you give me a quick explanation why?
Like a framework?
A framework, right. And then we have to pass that test. We don't just have the luxury of saying it's proprietary, everything's proprietary, and you don't get to question it. I do think the members should have a right to question that. I do also think that, though, principally, that there are good times when it needs to be closed and proprietary. Real estate is one of them. Businesses, business decisions that could affect people's jobs, where we're only talking about it. We haven't made any decision yet until we're ready. So that's one. The other one is bill versus, or motion versus resolution. Bill versus resolution versus motion. We do everything by resolution because we're a board of directors. We're not a government necessarily in the way that we're structured. And there's been times in our history where motions have been used to deny people the right of referendum. They've been very specifically misused. And one of them was to set somebody's salary at nearly $1 million. It was done as a motion. And it was done purposely, because I was chairing that meeting, and board members said, let's do it as a motion so members can't challenge it. That's definitely one of those areas where the members should be able to challenge that decision. A major decision like that should be. So we shouldn't be able to hide behind making it a motion, which that doesn't exist anywhere in any of our language, that we could do something by motion. A motion in our parliamentary meeting rules is just a procedural step in order to put a resolution on for an action. So we've used that as the excuse to deny people the right of referendum. So we should probably get away from doing motions, and unless they are just a verb as an action to make something happen at a meeting. There should be no such thing as a motion, especially not to give somebody $1 million salary, so.
Okay.
Aaron touched on Bill.
Did the volume just cut?
It does contemplate the use of a bill. So Lana's job is going to get a little more complicated because we'll have to be much more careful on bill versus resolution versus motion, because if we get it wrong, we get our hands slapped. So we'll have to do some work on 14. We're already thinking about it. I would probably want to do some training for everybody, myself included. I don't have a lot of experience in bills except helping draft a couple on occasion. The rest of these are just instances where elections, housing placements, waivers for gaming licenses, denial of assistance from some program. That's almost a separate category where maybe another way to phrase it is a member is denied some service for some reason. A member is offended by that and tries to take action in court. What we'll have to do there is, Josh is going to be very busy with that one, is it's going to require that all of our programs that service members really go through their policies and procedures and fine tune everything, make sure everything's in order, but more importantly, that it is administered very carefully and very intentionally, because if something is done wrong, whether it be intentional or not, whether it be a mistake or not, there possibly could be a repercussion. So we're starting just to internally think about how, I'll pick on housing. Sean was denied a house for whatever reason. He's mad. He goes and he sues Joni across the street. We need to make sure that Joni's program is able to demonstrate they did A, B, C, and D. Here's their internal regulations they follow. Here was the decision process, so that the tribe is in a place to handle that kind of event. Again, as I said, this whole section 6 is really just to demonstrate to you that internally staff is starting to think, how do we implement these things? And at some point, we'll have to start issuing some work orders to these programs, like, listen, this is coming. You got 2, 3, 4 months. We got to start fine tuning these things. And I want to throw out now, we probably are going to want to bring in some outside help to help all these programs kind of get ready for all of this. That might be too much for internal staff to handle. The process is starting in legal. It's going to start spilling out to the programs. We'll be having some conversations. You or members might start hearing about it. This is me telling you, we are going to start getting ready, and it'll probably generate some chatter, so I want you to be aware.
Okay, Aaron.
Okay, so I don't know if this is a benefit or a curse for me, but my first master's degree, my educational training was in public policy and administration, public administration, which is different than the law, okay? And so one of the things that I had to learn was the Administrative Procedures Act. There's an intersection between policy and procedure and law. And in the outside world, you have to exhaust your administrative remedies if you're challenging a decision that was made that you feel denied you the right for something, right? We do have a pretty sophisticated complaint procedure.
That's number 9.
Number 9? Okay, well, I'm jumping ahead. We have a pretty sophisticated complaint procedure, but one thing that's true about the procedure is the complaint goes up the chain of commands among colleagues of people that work together, that are friends, you know, that might tend to lean towards supporting each other rather than hearing the complaint in a completely unbiased fashion. And so rather than having the court vested with the authority to hear every little complaint, what would make sense is for us to establish an Administrative Procedures Act in the tribe that would afford the member or the service person going for services to challenge the decision up through an administrative procedure to an administrative law judge and have that decision made, because we do need an independent decision made, but it doesn't need to be a legal decision. If they feel like that procedure did not afford them their due process rights, they should be able to appeal that to the court. But that's the way it happens outside and the rest of the world, and so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have, and you and I have worked on this many, many times over the years, developing an administrative procedures
We have it
process
done.
for appeals, for employment appeals, for, grievances. Right now, we do, it's better than nothing. We do have an appeal procedure. We have a grievance procedure, but again, that grievance procedure goes up to peers, people that work together, executives that work together all the time, and it should really be independent. So, and I didn't cast aspersions on any of those executives, but it should be independent.
That said, I'll just jump to number 9 quick. I know I've spoken to the board a few times about our need for an Administrative Procedure Act. We have one. It was drafted. We've had it for a long time. Alice Walker was their primary author. She worked for Bruce Green. We looked at it, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's a very good document. It's ready to go. We're going to very strongly suggest, as Aaron said, that we implement that and structure that process for members to have a path to take care of an issue where they feel they're wrong that doesn't require full-blown litigation in court. And if they're not happy, they can still, in fact, go to court. So the good news there is the work is done. The only tricky part is what we're going to recommend under that draft document is that we would populate it with attorneys from around the state. It wouldn't be anybody in-house. We would probably want to go out and get 3 or 4 or 5 attorneys that are experienced in this kind of administrative legal work, and it's almost a revolving pool to hear these matters. Then, of course, upon implementation, and this is down the road, we'd have to spend some time and decide what is going to go through that process and what won't. That's for a later day. But it's an important piece to make sure membership has access to a body that can handle a grievance that simply doesn't require full-blown litigation, much less expensive, much less confrontational. It's a good tool. We've needed it for years. We need to do it.
Okay, Kim, go ahead.
In that procedure, could we put someone in there that will guide the individuals through this? Because not a lot of people know how to go and address a board with a grievance. Will there be someone who can sit with them and walk them through the process?
We can talk about it.
Okay,
Yeah. It's doable.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
doable.
Anyone else on 9, guys? Okay, you want to circle back on 7 then, Aaron?
So when we went through the draft document, it jumped out at us that we have, we'll have a council, we'll have chair, prosecutor, judge, and justices all elected, but there's not a body of language there that plugs in removal for any of them. So, we currently have an ordinance that tells us how to remove any of you, but we're adding some positions. The prosecutor, under this scenario, is potentially elected, potentially appointed, but if they're elected, there's nothing there telling us how a prosecutor could potentially be removed. That will need to discuss. Judge and justice says there's a judicial commission that'll have some power to rectify things if a judge is out of line, but that's just the judicial commission, which is perfectly fine. A lot of states are set up just that way. But we wanted to make sure that when the time comes, we have a conversation. We have a number of elected positions, and we do not yet have a removal process put in place for all of them. It's a conversation we will want to have. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. All of them work. Just wanted to flag it. It's something that just wasn't covered. That can happen down the road. There's no need to put anything in writing on that yet. How we set up that judicial commission and how they craft the rules might well just take care of the whole thing for us. We don't have to worry about it.
Okay, Aaron.
So the committee worked on that, and I think they created some structure to it, or they might have punted it to the courts to create once
They
they're
punted.
established.
Which is
Okay.
fine.
So but I do think that the legislature should, the Constitution should discharge the legislature to create the broad parameters of which then the court has to have certain elements in it. So that way the court can't just, create some, silly sort of process, but it mirror like the state's process or something on how do you remove a judge for malfeasance, or really that's almost is the only reason that you should be able to. Also, a protection of the judges, because what I've seen over the years is, and I won't point in any directions or any individual defendants, but individuals who have violated our treaty rights. We've had board members who have been very angry about it and demand to have the judge come explain herself, and I think that's an overreach. I think that if the judge is following the law, who the hell is that council member to think they know better than a judge who's interpreting the law? If they don't like the outcome, change the law, because that's the legislature's authority. But don't try to influence the judge to change their decision because you don't like the outcome. So we have to insulate the court. But I do think we should create the general parameters when the Judicial Commission goes off and writes their procedures and their protections, and also when it's correct to remove a judge. But then let them create it and then enact it, so.
Okay, anyone else on 7? Okay, so let's move to 8, Aaron.
8 is going to probably be a couple of workshops on its own. So if you take a state, for example, states carry some immunity from suit similar to a tribe, but most states enact a series of legislation that allows a citizen to sue the state for the case may be. They fall on the sidewalk, whatever happens. As things stand, we are going to end up with a constitution that allows a member to file a complaint against the tribe for whatever happened. But we also have immunity, which is going to be enshrined in the Constitution, but will be enacted by legislation. We currently have an immunity statute. At some point, we are going to have to come back in and look at our immunity statute and start examining tort statutes and make a determination on if Mike McCurchie slips on the icy sidewalk, we are going to allow Mike to sue the gaming authority for that slip and fall, but we're going to cap his damages at $1 million. So we're going to cap it at $500,000, whatever the case may be. That's just an example. We need to set up a statutory system that governs all these things, so everybody has kind of some sidebars to operate in. This is one of these things where there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. You just need to set the rules of the road, so it's not just a free-for-all. In some sense, you put the court in a little bit of a bind. They have to have that conversation amongst themselves behind closed doors. Well, do we give Mike, $5 million and bankrupt the tribe, or do we give Mike $500,000 because we feel it's fair? We'll want to have a conversation about how to legislate this and open up our current immunity from suits in a responsible way that gives the membership an avenue to be made whole, but also protects the tribe and its assets from something going too far. I've not put a lot of thought into this. It frankly didn't cross my mind just until recently. So we'll have to set another session probably just to have a conversation about that piece. And I'm probably going to loop in I think somebody from Butzel that kind of specializes in state slip and fall type work, that has experience in immunity in the state system, to get a better feel for how large governments handle their immunity and when dealing with their citizenship.
Okay, any final questions, comments on that number? Okay, any questions, comments on the board regarding this whole document before I turn things to the membership, if they have anything to say? Okay, anyone in the audience here want to speak on anything that was discussed today?
Oh, she's done coughing.
No, I just have a question.
Yeah, come on up, Lori.
No, just a quick question. I think this is really great. Listening to everybody today, it's really encouraging. But it would be really nice also if, when you have these meetings, that you have a copy of the documents that you're working from. I don't know if this is confidential at this point, but just so that we can follow along. I'm sitting here, I was sure you'd have a copy, and so I didn't bring anything, and so I'm feverishly typing on my phone, just so I can remember what's being said. And so it would be great to have some copies to,
Well, let's include that information when we notice it, and then we'll have some printed copies in the back of the room next time we meet.
that'd be great.
Yep, for sure.
And to be very clear, this memo I'm generating for the board that expands these things, it's a public document, there's nothing secret about it. By all means, share it, put it on Facebook, whatever you want to do with it.
Okay, very good. Anyone online have anything to say? I got a couple tribal members on there. We got Tony Grondin, Charles Forgrave. Any of you guys want to say anything? Tony, you're unmuted, so if you want to speak, go right ahead. But we can't hear you at all right now, Tony, so there appears to be technical issues on your side. Yeah, Tony, you unmuted, but we couldn't hear anything, and now you're muted again. So Rob's got his hand up. I'll call on Rob, and then I'll circle back around on you, okay? Go ahead, Rob.
No, I just wanted to point out, based on what Lori said, just to point out, that's why we decided to hold up on polling for anything, is to put this document out and get feedback from the membership and give membership a opportunity to let us know what you guys think and to have input.
All right, Tony, circling back around on you.
Does he have a number? Do we have a number he can call?
Okay, go ahead, Aaron.
So, Tony, we haven't been able to hear you, so I was just asking if we had a number, but we don't have a phone number to call in. If you could, I know the chat's probably disabled.
We disable them.
Okay.
I can call him later and just ask him what he wanted to ask.
Okay.
That's fine.
So can we set our next schedule of when we're going to be meeting? And
Absolutely, yeah.
Can we set a timeline, like maybe 5 days in advance, when we're going to post what we're going to walk through, at least tentatively where we're going to walk through, because it might change, so that people know to attend? And then also, like, can we project those dates out for the next 3 months or something?
I don't care. Yeah, that's fine with me.
I really thought this could be done already, but if we're going back through, the other thing that I want to be, I'm concerned about, and I just want to get clarity on, is we have already, for 20-some years, have been gaining input from people. So what I'm hoping doesn't happen is that a few people, see the opportunity to jump on and to filibuster and create a bunch of opposition, and then we hear that the loudest, when for 20 years we've had this draft document out, and we had 2 years of input of people that gave their input, that crafted the document, the original document. So I'm hoping that the loudest voices won't be able to veto all the voices for all those community meetings that were held initially, and then all those meetings that happened again, and the elder advisory. They shouldn't be able to be a veto over all those voices that supported the draft as it currently is.
Okay, Rob, then Bridget.
So to Aaron's point there, I agree. I don't want to see any kind of filibuster or a small faction decide to be naysayers and not want this. We have 20 years worth of membership input, which brings me to another point, which is the document that I presented was membership driven by the committee. So I know that some of the suggestions that our legal brought forward, we have to deal with them, and we do need decisions on them. So there's that. But going back to Aaron's point where, we have 20 years worth of membership input and a committee that actually worked on this for 2 years straight and put in countless hours. We can't deviate away from the document that I presented much without alienating the work that they did. So I think that we need to address these key points, but I think the fundamentals of the document must remain intact to honor the work that those committee members did and the document that they put forward. My suggestion to the people who don't want to see this is wait for a vote, wait for a secretarial election and vote how you feel that vote needs to go. But I would like to ask that, we're careful not to deny the members the right to vote on that, especially if there's any faction of members that don't want to see this. There's a very easy solution for that. It's vote no on the amendment. I support it, I'm going to vote yes, but to deny it, not to get to a vote, would be to deny all members the opportunity to vote on the structure of their government's constitution. So I think that if you don't want to see it, then vote no, but I think there's a lot more members who do want to see it. So I think that we need to at least afford them, all of members, the opportunity to vote on it.
Okay, Bridget, then Tyler.
So I know that Tony couldn't speak. He had sent me a message. He would like to see the Constitutional Committee reinstated. I know he wasn't on the committee. I think he attended all but 2 meetings, but he would like to see them reconvened because they were vetted and had the approval of the board at the time. So I'm just bringing forward what I know he probably wanted to talk about. So.
Okay, Tyler.
So at this point, I agree with Bridget. I think the Constitutional Convention Committee needs to be reorganized because ultimately there are 2 people at this table with the loudest voices that are basically saying that we don't have any voice for the people that we represent. So it really disenfranchises this even being at the board table. Secondly, legal brought up some serious concerns with how this was written. We're trying to go over them, and either we're going to have input as elected leaders or we're not. If we're not, what's the point of us even meeting at this table other than for 2 board members to just put on a show for a couple of people on Facebook? I think this is, this is a well thought out thing. Aaron Schlehuber and the legal team brought us great suggestions, great feedback, but now you're saying not to make any changes in the document. So what is the purpose of making Aaron and his team waste their time, their valuable time and effort on this, if we're not going to make any changes or amendments to the document that we're going to send out? Our duty first is to protect the Constitution and the tribe and not interrupt businesses on a daily basis. Aaron put forward that this has happened in other tribes where it has put an entire stop to the tribal operation process because every branch just immediately sues each other. And he's trying to eliminate that. And you're saying that our voices of concern are filibustering when we're actually trying to come together on an agreement to make this actually work for our tribe and our people. It's just absurd. I am supportive of a separation of powers, but I'm not supportive of obstructing each other and silencing each other through bullying and through misrepresenting how people actually believe and, what we believe in and what we're actually trying to improve in our tribe. I mean, are we going to work on this together and actually put forward a document that we can get good amendments out to not stop our tribe and make sure that we continue to move forward? Or are we going to continue to sit here and pontificate and do all this other nonsense at the table and guilt each other into voting one way or another? My vote is always in the best interest of the tribe, and Aaron Schlehuber has brought us some serious things to consider in changing and red line documents showing those things. I think all of that should be put out for the membership so they can see it. But at this point, I would agree with if Tony Gronin saying bring together a Constitutional Convention Committee. I think that's the way to go because clearly we're not allowed to have input at this table from the way that I've heard things today. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's definitely how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like this is just a dog and pony show for two people right now. Yield.
Can I respond to the CEO, please?
Mike?
I don't agree with doing the, reconvening a constitution. We've gotten their input. I don't want to delay it any further, but at the same token, I also don't, if we got issues, we need to address them. Now is the time to address them. So we want to make sure the document that we're putting to the membership is the best document we can be moving forward. But I also don't want to convolute it too much where it's the separation of powers that we're prioritizing. That's the one that we want to get in front of people. Some of these that you stated can get punted. They can get punted to other constitutional reform things. So they're great questions, but I don't know if it's the separation, it is and it isn't at the same time. There's issues in here that obviously there's separation of powers that could pose problems and potentially will pose problems. But at the same token, if we get too far sidetracked on all the what ifs versus the separation of power issue that's in front of us, I don't want to delay it too long that make it so perfect that it takes 2 years to do. So we have to weigh it. We have to figure out some way to, yes, this is the time to address these. Some of these we can punt. Some of them are going to be problematic, but the separation of power issue can address some of them. So we have to figure out a way to try to balance this out between, because there are several of us that don't want to delay it and have it go down, and there's going to be some of us that want to make sure that this is absolutely perfect because this might be the only time we get it done. So trying to weigh those out, well, I mean, we each as board members got to do it. I hope it doesn't go down the road of that we don't do anything, that we sit here and we fight about it again and then it just doesn't go anywhere. Because I do think the separation of powers is huge. I think we've seen it happen and not be addressed. Right now there is no recourse for a member to get anything looked at constitutionally, and that is wrong. And we need to address it and address it in a way that we can't just take it away when we feel like it.
I agree with you, Mike. You're not wrong. The trick is you're focusing on a member feels that the board has done something that violates the Constitution, and that member wants to go across the street and have the board's action challenged. Do that today. I'm fine with it. What I'm flagging to you is we're over 50,000 members. We have 1,600 employees. We're massive. The administrative machine that is the tribe is not ready for this. The potential for unintentionally, the potential for the court to end up running the tribe through series and series and series of litigation is not something I'm comfortable just turning a blind eye to. The board's conduct being challenged across the street, we can do that today. I'm not worried about that. I'm focusing more on the administration angle of the actions of the administration being challenged, right or wrong. The administration needs to be ready for it. So the things we are flagging to that we tell you are big button issues are big button issues. The things we're flagging to you that can get punted down the road, it can get punted down the road. I mentioned a disenrollment. If it takes 3 years, I don't care. We'll survive. There are a lot of low-hanging things, and as we present them, we're trying to tell you these are low-hanging things that we'll get there. We're not terribly worried about. But there are a lot of things through the administration process we simply can't get wrong. We're too big. The matter of how we handle our immunity, that's a massive ticket we have to get right. Does not be perfect. We'll do some legislation. We'll do it wrong. That is guaranteed. This will not be right the first time. We'll come back in and have to fix all kinds of things endlessly. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We do have to get it done. But there are a number of things that we're paid to tell you these are problems. And then you have to do that risk-reward analysis and decide where those stand. So that list I gave you today, the big one on top, gaming authority, who do they work for? That's a big one. We simply have to decide. We can't not decide. As you go down, they get less and less concerning. So risk reward, we'll just have to figure it out.
Okay, Aaron, then Rob.
All right, I'm going to do my best to resist the temptation to impugn board members at this table. That just happened. We were called grandstanding, and that's inappropriate. It might be coming from a position of defense, so maybe that's why. But what I'm going to say is that there's people who are purporting to represent the interests of the people who drafted this up in the first place. The people who drafted this up in the first place aren't here, and it could be because they're satisfied that they worked their butts off for 2 years and created a document, and they're wondering why we haven't done anything with it yet. It's been 18 years. These meetings are posted, they're open, they're public. I have a sense that if anybody that was in that original Constitutional Convention Committee was so hot and bothered that we're not doing what they want us to do, which is to follow through, then they would be here. They would be telling us. Also, I want to say that long before I ever ran for the board, I studied this stuff. I looked at it. This wasn't a casual, I'm not a casual tribal member that's partially interested. I looked at this. When I ran, this is in my very first platform when I ran for office, and it's been in my platform every single time. I would never put this in my platform if I didn't intend for it to happen and follow through. It would be disingenuine for me to have put it in my platform and then make excuses for us to be this close and to try to create reasons why we shouldn't move forward. That would be wrong. That would be unethical, and it wouldn't be worth being reelected. So I'm not going to apologize. If people saw me on this video today or whatever, and they interpret that I'm grandstanding because I know what the hell I'm talking about, it's because I took the time to read the drafts. I took the time to look at other tribal governments. I took the time to investigate the Iroquois Confederacy Great Law of Peace. I did my homework. I came here with something to say because that's what we're paid to do. I said this to one board member a long time ago, don't fault me for doing my job, and I won't fault you for not doing yours. You don't get to decide how I do my job. The people who vote for me get to decide that. They get to decide how you do your job. I came here prepared. I had input because I have experience and I've studied this. We didn't hear anything from some people. So this is the time for you to weigh in. This is important. This is probably the biggest thing other than the threat from the federal government right now, but this is the biggest thing we have in front of us to stabilize our government so we can withstand the future and we can have a real structured government, and that our people can finally have the right to challenge to make sure that their individual citizen rights are protected. That is not the case right now. I lose sleep over that. We shouldn't be comfortable. We shouldn't decide our role as board members is to fly off to conferences and think that we're fulfilling our duty. This is the most important thing. Going to Las Vegas three months in a row is probably not all that important.
I object.
Okay, you guys.
Of course you do.
We have Rob on the list, then Lori wants to speak. It's almost 6 o'clock. We've covered all the items. Let's not get in a back and forth with one another. You guys want to fight, call each other up on the phones. So, Rob.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what King Tyler was talking about when he said.
You done with it?
Oh, drop it. Of course you do. Talking about standing up on a soapbox or pleasing a couple of people online, I would say respond to that by saying maybe take a look at my engagement over the last 21 years and you'll realize that at 15 years old I was the president of our tribal youth council. That's 21 years ago. I've never not been engaged. I had these documents probably memorized by the time I was 25. I ran for election when I was 25. I could recite these documents to you. And to say that we're denying you input at this board table is absolutely absurd. What we're doing is protecting the work of the Constitutional Committee. So on one hand, you're saying, let's reestablish and reaffirm the Constitutional Committee. And on the other hand, you want to dissect what the original Constitutional Committee has done. One filibuster was used to let the elder committees handle it and to get their input. What was their input? They sat right there and told you, we want the 2012 version. So what did I do? I extracted the 2012 version of the separation of powers. That's what's in front of you. So the fact that I'm going to stand here and defend it and protect it from a board manipulating the process when the purpose of the Constitutional Committee was to remove it from the board's hands and to make it a membership-led document, and that's what we have. It was brought to all units. Membership had input. So don't deny them their right based on some fictitious idea that the membership elected you to have full authority to exercise your will on a document that is supposed to be a membership-driven document. That was the purpose of it. So to say that something I've been advocating for almost 20 years now is all of a sudden to put on a show or to cater to a couple of people online, you might want to fact check, because anybody sitting on this board that's been here for over 10 years can tell you that I've been engaged in our tribe since I was probably about 15, actually since I was about 5 at the Lumsden Center, because I used to do karaoke there. But it's just crazy to stand up and say that someone's trying to stop you from having input when I clearly just said that these revisions and suggestions are things that we need to discuss, and they are, but I am absolutely not going to back down on protecting the fundamentals of the document that was determined by the Constitutional Committee. And I think it's talking out of both sides of your mouth when you say we need to establish a Constitutional Committee, but then try to tear apart what the Constitutional Committee already made. I don't get it. There's just nothing about it. And honestly, I think someone's just mad that their slush fund is being called into question.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to speak on
I'm
something.
going to say it like it is.
And then Lori, you can come on up when you're done, and let's be done with this. So Aaron Schlehuber, I have no issue with you bringing up supposed flaws with that document that was created. I mean, Betty Frawhite saw it on there. I mean, we can invite her and she'll say that's filled with them. You can have people that were involved in that process, that have been involved in government, that will say there's pragmatic issues implementing it as written. I mean, Aaron can go through it. If we're being honest and real, that's the facts, okay? So let's be real about it. So Tyler, if you want to speak, let's be done. Then Lori, you can come on up when he's done, okay?
Yes, thank you for that, Chairman. That's all I'm getting at, is that our legal department has brought up serious issues that have impacted other tribes that tried to implement similar structure, and he is trying to bring this to our attention to change the language. Therefore, we do need to come to an agreement to change the language to protect our tribe and our operations as we know it today. If we do not do that, we risk 1,600 people and their families and all of the families of this tribe. These are people's lives. This is a huge economic driver in the Eastern Upper Peninsula. Like, this isn't a game for us to be playing. We need to take this seriously. And when he says this could hurt this, and then in turn could hurt this, we need to make those changes in that document in order to send it out for a vote. You don't just send a document out for a vote and say, let's just see what the people feel. And then tomorrow, or it gets passed, and then the secretary approves it, and then here we are with a non-functioning tribe.
Okay.
He's shown us countless examples. All I'm asking is that we make the changes that are recommended, we come to an agreement with the languages, and that we get something passed that works for the tribe so the tribe can continue to work, and that we have a separation. Nobody's saying to stop the separations, but it seems like anybody that speaks up gets shut down. That's how I feel. That's how many others feel. So I'm putting that out there.
So, Rob,
and you say that I'm an obstructionist because I have these questions, because Aaron Schlehuber is bringing these things to our attention. That's not obstruction. That is protecting. that is protecting the tribe.
Okay, Lori, if you don't mind, Rob, talk, and then let's be done with it, okay? You guys know each other's numbers. You guys don't agree on this, agree to disagree, quit going back and forth.
Well, the disagreements need to happen in front of the membership, because that's the point why obviously why we're talking. We're a government. If he wants to disagree with me, I want to disagree in front of the membership. Because no one blamed him for anything that he's saying. It clearly said that this stuff needs to be discussed. No, I mean, the input's happening right now. So to try to frame this as someone's trying to stop something from happening, that's the whole reason this is. I would like to point out one thing, though, that don't forget that this will go to a review by the BIA, who has done it many times. They're not gonna not tell you when something's gonna make a conflict. So my point was that there's fundamental issues within the document that I am going to protect. And if it needs to be a fight, it's going to be a fight. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it really loudly, because membership rights must be protected. And I'm not going to allow this board to totally throw away the fundamentals of this document and to legislate the court to the point where we're putting a box around them of what they can and cannot do. That would totally defeat the purpose of a separation of powers. We cannot legislate the court that much.
We all
So-
done, guys? Okay, go ahead, Lori.
I just wanted to say that I was on the Constitutional Committee way back when. And I appreciate, this is, mark this down on your calendars, because I'm going to say I've agreed with just about everything that's been said here tonight, and that's unusual. But I think that what we have to recognize when we look back at the work that was done initially, this tribe was half the size. We didn't have any of the infrastructure that we have today. There was so much has changed. We have to review that document. I know that it needs changes. So that's number one.
So you're not offended by that, Lori?
I'm not offended by that.
Thank you so much.
No.
I don't think anyone is. Nobody's offended by a review process.
I do think that the piece that Rob is trying to protect needs to be protected and not watered down in any way. We can take a look at what happened in the past 48 hours in our country, where one branch tried to steal the power of the other branch. And millions of people across this country. I had to have a meeting today with my staff. I have almost 50 people that work for me, and tell them that there is a real risk of shutting Strong Hearts Native Helpline down. If they freeze our funds, we do not have non-federal funds to operate. 50 people without a job. So that's what a bad government looks like. Thankfully, we have some rails that are keeping us on track, right? My recommendation, take it for what it is. We have an administrative code that needs to be revised. Get that done. That's going to solve a lot of problems. The other piece, y'all should be already working with the directors that work for this tribe and tell them to get their standard operating procedures in place, so that when people do challenge, because those challenges will come, when people have the right to redress a bad decision, those cases are going to come, and our directors have to be prepared for that. They need to be working on those SOPs right now. Don't wait on that. And then the last thing that I'll say is that I have appreciated the conversation that has happened. As just a citizen, I want to know what my members are thinking. I want to know, what they don't know. I want to hear them ask questions. It's really hard to sit back and watch, and number one, not have the opportunity for input, so I really appreciate this tonight. But then also to not hear conversation. I don't know who's missing. I know there's some people online. I don't know. Your views are important to the people that elected you. what you are thinking is important. You have to speak up. It's so hard to sit back and watch and not hear our leaders speak. So, mark it on the calendar, Aaron. I really have appreciated the background that you brought and your perspective. I think it's really important. I think everybody's perspective is important. And I hope that y'all get to the place where we can have civil back and forth. You know, there were some digs that happened tonight, and people retaliated. The first one never should have happened. That's not professional. That's not leadership. That's what we've seen at the federal level. So just my opinion, I hope we all get to where we can speak openly and civilly and honestly with each other. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Hey, Lori,
Yeah,
appreciate your words. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Lana, you're on the committee. You had some things that you're whispering to me. You want to speak on it, and then we'll call on Kim to end this whole thing for us for today.
Kim was on the committee with us,
Yeah.
and all I was gonna say was, like Lori, I'm not offended that this is going on because we did put this together 20 years ago. She's right, we weren't near the size we are. We just, I would prefer as an original member of the committee that we not take our time because it has to get done. I'm still excited as a tribal member about a separation of powers because I seen the need for it then, or I wouldn't have put my name in for the committee. And I believe personally that the original document we put together was way extreme. This is me speaking as a member of the committee. I think that some of the things in there that's more administrative, not a constitution. There's a lot of things in that original one that just should never belong in a constitution, and that's just my thought. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to get to the answers that Aaron's bringing up to make sure that we protect our tribe as much as we possibly can. No, you never had it.
You want to close things up first, Kim? Then we'll get out of here.
Yep, I want to thank Lori for her comments, because I was going to say the same thing. Our tribe has changed so much in the last 22 years, and there's 3 of us here, and I'm okay with the discussions we're having, because I agree with Lana. There was so much in that original that shouldn't have been in there. It was all administrative duties that, it was just making that Constitution too big, and we needed to trim it down, and I think that's where we're going to get to from this point. And my biggest thing was the separation of powers, so thank you, everybody.
All right, so we're going to be done for the day. If anyone wants to contribute, there's a Line 5 event tomorrow in Walloon Lake, and then obviously Friday, we're hosting the legislative reception and dinner. It is your opportunity to lobby for the Sioux Tribe at the state level. So your state senators will be there, your state reps will be there. I encourage every single one of you guys to show up and help out with it. So, yep. So I appreciate it, you guys. See you guys later.
The recording has stopped.